Hey guys, and welcome to a special episode. Today I am without my normal co-host Jose. I will be doing this solo. I'm looking to try and do a couple more of these in the future. This is just my initial thoughts on everything going on with Cyberpunk 2077 as it was released yesterday, December 10th. And there have been a lot of issues, a lot of people talking online about, different glitches and issues that they've had. And I just wanted to go over some of those and also just let you guys know what my personal experience with this game has been so far. Like I said, I'll be doing this solo and I'm going to be trying to do some more episodes of this. Not sure yet whether or not my co-host Jose will be joining me on those video game reviews. Either way, we will also still have the Steelers State of the Franchise episodes coming at you every single week. And we're going to have a prediction and game pick episode coming up this weekend before the game. So keep your eyes peeled for that. But let's get right on with this initial thoughts of this video game. All right, so if you don't know, if you've been living under a rock or just not really in the gaming community like I myself am, Cyberpunk is a big, huge, widely anticipated game, probably one of the most widely anticipated games in recent memory. 8 million pre-orders, which is insane for a video game, especially, a game this big, especially, considering that there's a possibility that there could have glitches. A lot of people tend to kind of wait until they work some of those things out before they, go ahead and make the purchase, which, after playing it for about 6 hours or so, I haven't really gotten too deep into it. But after having played what I've played, I can understand why people wouldn't want to buy a big time game right off the bat. Because to be quite honest, this game is an absolute mess, technically speaking. I do believe that there is a really awesome game underneath all of these bugs and everything. And I do want to also preface by saying I understand that updates and things like that are going to happen, and we're going to have probably a more smoother game sometime in the future, hopefully sooner rather than later. But as it stands right now, I just felt like I needed to talk a little bit about my own personal experiences with this mess of a glitchy, buggy game. I also want to say that I do enjoy, a lot of the aspects of this game too, and I'll get into that as well. But if you don't know, Cyberpunk is a game that follows V, and you can play your character as either a male or female, and you're still the same name, V. And it's just set in Night City, which is a futuristic city, and we're not really sure what state it's in, but it's out like near the desert. Sort of think of it kind of like Las Vegas, only, 2077 Las Vegas. That's kind of what I attribute it to. But yeah, so you're basically a mercenary for hire. You go about and do these odd jobs and stuff like that. And also there's Keanu Reeves, who plays Johnny Silverhand, who was a former rocker 50 years ago, turned terrorist 50 years ago. He was killed supposedly. And, he's in your head for the majority of your playthrough, other than the beginning part, like the prologue and all that. But so that's the gist of what the game is about. I haven't gotten too far into the story just yet. I played through the prologue, but I haven't really gotten that far after that. I've seen Johnny Silverhand. I've been introduced to him. So that's kind of where I am right now. So keep that in mind, that my review here is not from the perspective of someone who has completed the game. All right, so having said all of that, this game, I have run into similar issues that a lot of people have seemingly run into online from all of the things that I have read and watched video-wise. And a lot of just little glitches here and there when I first started the game didn't really, interrupt my experience with the game at first. But as I continued to go on further and further, it started to become more and more noticeable and more troublesome too. Just for example, I was playing yesterday and there was just a little, little glitches, and some of them are funny, admittedly, but I was playing and I had to get to this particular building, and usually when you get to the building, you have to hit square to open the door. Whereas this particular time, I ended up just walking straight through the building, and there was no, notification or no little thing on the HUD saying, this is where you're supposed to be. Hit square to open the door, hit square to interact. Whatever the case. There wasn't really a whole lot of direction from what I've played so far. The mini map has a tracker on it from the mission that you're tracking and trying to get to. That shows up when it wants to, apparently. I've seen it most of the time, it's there, but other times there's no map marker or anything like that on the mini map. Even when you set a track to track the mission, you still don't really know where you're supposed to go sometimes, and I feel like that's probably another glitch that I haven't really heard too many people talk about, other than a couple friends of mine who also play the game. But yeah, so that was, kind of weird, but, I kind of just looked past that. There was another instance where I was in the middle of a mission and I shot one of the guys that was in the elevator that we were supposed to get to. And when I shot the guy, he was dead. We went down the elevator, and as we were going down the elevator, this guy's lifeless body is still in the elevator, but it's jumping up and down for some reason, just oddly jumping up and down. And then I'll run into some issues where I pull my gun out and you can't see the gun. All you see is the guy's hand motions as you're shooting the gun. I've even seen, and this hasn't actually happened to me, but I've seen people complain about it, and I personally think it's a little funny, but still it's kind of ridiculous, is you can customize your genitalia in this game, which is a whole other conversation, but you can. And I've heard some people say that there were instances where they were in a cut scene and their genitalia was popping out through the clothes that they were wearing. So I mean, that's kind of a funny glitch, in my mind anyway. I think it's kind of funny. It doesn't take me out of the game. If that was to happen, I would just kind of laugh that off. But just little stupid things like that. But there have been so many other glitches and so many other performance issues I've run into just today, and just involving the game crashing several times when I was in the middle of a mission. I had to go to the Delamain, which is like basically the Uber of Night City, and had to go and talk to one guy and also find a malfunctioning car, because these are automatically controlled cars. There's no actual drivers. It's just self-driven. And there was one particular car that was malfunctioning and just running people over and stuff like that. So I had to try and, go there and deal with that and try and fix it if I could. But I never got to that point to be able to fix it, because right when I found the car, the game crashed completely and kicked me completely out of the game. That was the first time that had happened, but I've had friends that have said that it's happened several times to them. And this was my first experience with it. And after that one time that had happened, it continued to happen, more and more, to the point where I just had to turn the game off because I was just getting frustrated, and I understand that there are probably going to be, fixes and updates and stuff like that. But in my personal opinion, I don't believe this game should have been released in the state that it was in. And just to give you kind of a reference as to, my feelings on the game right now, the Avengers came out recently in September, I believe it was. And, although that game is not anything like Cyberpunk in terms of story and gameplay and all that, it had a lot of bugs, and I just flat out did not like it. I thought the characters were scaled really wrong, and it was a mess, I think. And there were a lot of glitches in that. Cyberpunk by far has more glitches than Avengers did. There were times in Avengers where you would just be sitting on the loading screen and nothing would happen. You would just be staring at all of the Avengers as their faces came up, and your mission would never start. It would never get out of the loading screen, which was really annoying. It caused me to, restart several times. But even that was probably the most major glitch in that game that I had a problem with. And with this game, it just seems to be way more problems. It almost looks like what you would see on a Nintendo 64 graphics, like GoldenEye, for example, even though that game, in my opinion, is one of the best games of all time, and I really wish they would remake it someday. But that's one of my favorite games of all time. But even then, I mean, everyone can attest to this. N64 graphics were not that great looking back at them now, even though that console was one of the best of all generations consoles. And even that game, kind of looks similar to Cyberpunk, which is absolutely ridiculous considering now we're, in 2020 with all the, next gen consoles and everything coming out. And also, I have to let you guys know that I have this game on my PlayStation 4. I don't have the PlayStation 5 for obvious reasons. It's very, very hard to get one right now. And so I've been playing on the PS4, the base PS4. And although I've seen also a lot of people talk about, oh, well, this is a next gen game, no, I mean, it's not. If that was the case, then they would release it for PS5, meaning like a PS5 version of Cyberpunk, which they did not do in this case. Cyberpunk was released only on PS4, Xbox One S, or and PC, and Stadia and all that. But it was not released as a next gen game. That upgrade is supposedly coming next year. So that argument I kind of just throw away because it doesn't really have any validity to it. And this game, as hyped as it was, I mean, it was delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed again. And for it to come out in this shape is really, in my opinion, just unacceptable. I mean, I know that The Witcher 3 had a lot of bugs in it too at launch, which is CD Projekt Red's previous game before this one. And it had tons of bugs, and it ended up being regarded as one of the greatest games of all time because, they did fix a lot of the issues with that game. I'm hoping and I'm trusting that they will do the same thing here, as CD Projekt Red has a good track record for doing so. Although their marketing for this game really kind of was false advertising, in my opinion, because you see all of the videos at E3, in 2018, the gameplay looks phenomenal, even then. And I mean, I know that's not the finished product, so it's kind of hard to really compare the two things, especially in a 2-year difference between, the E3 presentation and where we are today. But, I still think it's a little ridiculous that this game still is this bad. I can deal with a few glitches here and there because every big launch game has glitches and issues, technical issues, performance issues. Usually they're pretty minor and you can kind of, go through it. Every now and then you'll get one of those game breaking or immersion breaking glitches, that will frustrate you, or whatever the case. But, for the most part, I feel like launched games are usually pretty smooth performance wise, especially big time games like this. Like, for example, Red Dead Redemption 2 was another very, very hyped up game. And that I don't think I had any issues at all with the launch of that game. I mean, of course, that's a different developer. That's Rockstar Games and not CD Projekt Red like this one is. So, it's kind of hard to really compare those two also. But, even sticking with Rockstar, when they had Grand Theft Auto 5 that came out, and even those had some glitches in those too, but that still was not to the point where you thought that it was going to take you completely out of the game. And this game, where I stand at it right now, is I feel like I don't want to even touch it. I want to put it back in my library until they come out with some more updates and some more patches, because that day one patch that apparently was included in the initial download of the game, especially if you got it digitally, that was already added onto the game, and it was a 43 gig 42 or 43 gig update. So that's almost the size of, or kind of the size of most games, sometimes bigger than, what most full games are. And that was just for an update. And you would think that after a massive update like that, that any kind of bugs, or at least a good portion of the bugs and stuff like that, would be fixed to the point where it's playable, because right now it's not playable, plain and simple. And it really bums me out because I was really excited to play this game. And, I pre ordered it months ago, when it was announced that it was coming out in September. I had pre ordered it, and then it got delayed to, November. And then a couple days before it was supposed to come out, it got delayed again to December. And that should have been a warning sign right there. But it is what it is. Another thing I wanted to touch on too is a lot of reviewers that I follow and subscribe to on YouTube. They all, and like, for example, Yang Ye, he's a really good. If you want like a more in-depth, more technical kind of side to a review, check him out over on his channel. I'll leave the link in the subscription. Also, Skill Up, he's another good one. I can leave the link in the description as well. If you want a more in-depth look at the actual ins and outs of the game, they do a really good job, explaining everything to where it's more understandable and, entertaining for the fans and for gamers and stuff like that. And I tend to agree with most of what they, say when it comes to a game that's releasing. They were talking a lot about how CD Projekt Red provided them, those review copies of the game, but would only let you review the game on a PC. They would not let you have any kind of gameplay from your own console or anything like that. And that is pretty alarming as well. It's like they were hiding, what this supposed finished product was on consoles. And, after playing it on console, it is anything but a finished product. And this is something that should have been delayed at least another 6 months, maybe even a year. I'm not sure exactly how long it takes to do all of those things, to fix all of those bugs. So, however much time they needed, they should have taken that and, polished this game off to a more respectable kind of playthrough. And the fact that they didn't, they kind of just marketed as this, immersive game, this, game changer kind of game, like something that we haven't experienced before. And in a lot of ways, it still is that, there are some good things about this game. There's fun to be had. Like the actual story itself, I really like. And, that's what really frustrates me the most is, as cool as the story is and as cool as the world that they built around this story is, it's really a bummer when you're in the middle of doing a mission and, it just completely glitches out. Like you'll start flying in your car, and there's no flying cars in Cyberpunk, at least none that I've come across that are part of the game yet. It shouldn't be flying, and you shouldn't be able to just drive through buildings, and another thing too, which was very misleading from CD Projekt Red, was when they first, showed off the gameplay at that E3 show in 2018. It showed a world that was like very densely populated. There were a lot of people on the streets, a lot of things happening on the streets. And once I actually picked up the game and started playing it, the streets, it was almost like they wanted to make it realistic to where quarantine has been, how a lot of areas are like ghost towns. There's not a lot of people walking around. It was almost like playing CD Projekt Red in a world where COVID-19 is still a thing and people are still on lockdown because there's very, very few people on the streets, and also just very few cars on the streets. I found myself running from place to place, like sometimes, 1,000 kilometers, game miles or whatever, to a certain location because, typically in a game like that, you'd like to be able to, break into a car and take a car or hijack a car or something like that and get to your destination, Grand Theft Auto style, but there's nothing really like that. I mean, there are a couple cars on the road here and there, but it's you can go long periods of gameplay where there's just nobody on the road and there's no cars on the road, so you really have to like walk to your destination, which is fine if you want to look around at everything, but with the game glitching out so many times and the frame rates dropping and all of that, and a lot of areas and textures not loaded completely, it really gets to be frustrating, when you're trying to play and you're trying to, marvel at the world that they've created, that they've taken so much time and so much effort into creating, to have it bogged down by bugs and technical and performance issues is really disappointing. And I hope that they fix, a good majority of these things sooner rather than later, because I do want to get into the game again. And I mean, I probably still will play it a little bit, but I'm not going to probably play it nearly as much as I would have if it was a polished product. I'd probably be, instead of doing this video, I'd be playing it right now more than likely. But I really just, I'm getting to the point where I just don't really have any desire to sit through something that's so messy like this, And again, I know it sounds like I'm kind of shitting on the game and all that. And I mean, in a way, I kind of am, but you know, you I work with what you give me. I mean, this is a messy game. It's a messy, buggy game. There's no other way around it. If you have a PS5 or an Xbox Series S or X, apparently it runs smoother, even though it's not, a PS5 or next gen series game. It still runs a lot smoother, which is to be expected because it's an next gen console, and the hardware we're running on the PS4 is like 13 years old or whatever it is. So I get that. Obviously it's going to be a little bit better on the PS5. That's why it's the next gen console. It's supposed to be better, but this is a game that was marketed as being able to run on all consoles, current consoles and next gen consoles, and it's just not playable on current gen consoles, meaning PS4, Xbox One, and this is a base PS4 that I was running on, not PS4 Pro or anything like that. And it's just really bad in the state that it's in right now. But yeah, I mean, if you guys have any other thoughts on the game, if you've experienced some glitches and stuff like that, or anything like any of the pictures that I've posted on this video, anything similar to that, you know, comment below, make sure you hit subscribe also on this channel. Those are my thoughts on this game as it is right now. That could change by the time I get finished with my playthrough. But as it stands right now, this game is an absolute utter disaster on PlayStation 4 anyway. I can only really speak to my personal experiences, and that's just what my personal experiences have been. If you haven't had those experiences or any of those kind of game-breaking glitches, great, and if you're loving the game, great. I'm jealous of you because I wish that I could be there, at that point, loving the game as much as some people probably do, but as it stands right now, it's just not a good game, really. It's not in the state that it is. The story's there, which is good. Everything else looks to be interesting, but when you can't play a game because of all the bugs and glitches, I gotta mark it down as a bad game as it stands right now. Like I said, that could change. I could have a totally different opinion in a few weeks, or a couple months, or however long it takes them to do a couple more updates and a couple more fixes. But I'm not digging it right now, and it's a bummer because I was really excited for this game. It's 8 years it's been in development, I believe. So for it to be in development for that long and for it to be in this state is ridiculous. And I'm starting to learn my lesson more and more to not pre-order games and to actually just wait at least a week or two until they, get released and I have full reviews on it and stuff like that. So I can kind of go based off of what some other gamers have experienced. Because if I didn't pre-order the game and I hadn't bought it yet, after listening to all of the reviews and, you know, all the things that people were having problems with, I would never even buy this game, at least not for at least a year, I would think, you know. But yeah, so those are my thoughts on Cyberpunk 2077's issues. It's not obviously not a full depth review of the game because I haven't completed it yet, but you know, I'll try and get that full review out to you guys as soon as I'm done with it. But that just really depends on how long it takes them to fix this messy game. All right, so that's like I said, everything that I have for you guys. If you guys have similar thoughts, please feel free to comment and hit a like and subscribe on this YouTube channel. And again, we're going to be coming at you guys with some more Pittsburgh Steelers material for all you Steeler fans out there, or just sports fans in general. We've got one coming up with the pregame and prediction of the Buffalo Bills game for Sunday Night Football. We'll also have our post-game review as well shortly after that, probably the next day since it's a Sunday night game. But yeah, so keep your guys peeled for that. And once again, thank you guys all for watching, and I appreciate all the support for this channel. And I will catch you guys next time.